the host of the Ongoing History of New Music. And I am a lifelong U2 fan. I remember exactly where I was when I first heard I Will Follow. I was in my room doing an essay for high school. This thing comes on, and the guy says, listen to the guitars, they're a bit weird, but I think you'll get into it. And I remember turning around, looking at my radio and going, what the hell is this? And that was it. And this is what has brought me to tonight. And our special guest, Daniel Lanois. Now, as everybody knows, March 9th, last Thursday, was the 30th anniversary of one of the greatest records ever released, which was the Joshua Tree, of course, and Dan was there for the making of this record. So
that's right.
I thought that let's have a seat.
All right, Al, thank you.
Let's have a seat. Let's talk. I mean, this is a record that sold 25 million-ish copies. Let me just pull up my questions here because I have questions.
He likes that.
So let's start with your involvement. You were brought in to do The Unforgettable Fire with Brian Eno. When did you know that you were going to be involved in the album that came after?
Well, having finished The Unforgettable Fire, I said to The Edge, and I thought we had something left to say. And on the strength of that tiny comment, there was an invitation to carry on into the next record, which became the Joshua Tree.
What was there left to say? What did you think?
I felt that we had just touched on some of the sonics that were most dear to us, and that the experiments had only just begun, and that we had a lot to yet discover in terms of innovation.
Because there was the first three albums, which are fairly, looking back in retrospect, fairly straight ahead rock oriented. You get to The Unforgettable Fire, and there are new textures. There's songs like Bad. There's songs like Wire. There's songs like Behind the Name of Love, which were markedly different from anything that U2 had done sonically up until that point. What did you and Brian Eno bring out on that record?
We brought a sound to Dublin that we were already making in Hamilton. I had been working with Brian late 1979 to, let's say, late 82, 83. We made a half a dozen ambient records in Hamilton, and we had refined this textural sound that Brian was very excited about. And we found, through various experiments, we found a way of building sounds with different octaves. And so that stratospheric sound that is heard on The Unforgettable Fire is something we already had up our sleeve from Hamilton.
So I talked to Larry Mellon once, and he said one of the reasons he wanted to work with you on the Joshua Tree was because you had a real respect for the rhythm section.
I was a man of the drum when I arrived in Dublin. I had already experimented in the old Hamilton library, because the library had relocated, and the building they vacated was a beautiful building, I think built in the 20s or 30s, and it had endless corridors and labyrinths and beautiful foyers and mezzanines, and I coincidentally had been experimenting in that old building. The city gave me the key to the place, so I recorded a couple of rock and roll records in that place, because my own studio was a nice studio, but it was very padded, lots of carpet everywhere. And I just had this appetite to start experimenting with stranger rooms, more reverberant rooms or denser rooms. So when the invitation came to work with U2, they also wanted to break the habit of the usual studio, and they wanted to record in an environment that might be more expansive. So it was right for the job.
So that's Danesmoor House?
Well, initially we recorded at Slane Castle, which was for The Unforgettable Fire, but ultimately we ended up at Danesmoor, which became Adam Clayton's house.
And then did you finish up at Windmill Lane?
We always finished up at Windmill Lane because it was right in the city and a good place to mix. You know, sometimes we get 2 mixing rooms going. We'd have one mixing team on one side of the glass, the other team on the other side of the glass, and whenever you got a mix, you put up a scorecard, and which would insinuate that you'd be ahead of the other room. So we have this little back and forth game going.
So, in 85, 86, and people will probably agree with me. 85, 86, there was this anticipation that U2 was on the verge of doing something absolutely super extraordinary. I mean, we saw it with The Unforgettable Fire. There was the Amnesty International tour that came after the record, during the sessions for this album. And when the Joshua Tree finally hit on March 9th of 1987, I think we were all kind of we knew that they were going to do something big. I don't think we were prepared for something that big.
I'm not sure anybody was. I mean, it just sort of blew up, and I think the world was ready for something fresh and something vibrant, and rock and roll with a new spirit, and I think it all came into focus at that time. You know, I think it's a great record, but it was an interesting time that way. There was a lot of embrace.
Well, they embraced America in a huge way, and that became the subtext, not a very subtle subtext, but definitely the subtext for the entire record. Why did U2 become so fascinated with the United States?
Well, to be honest with you, I'm not sure what that was all about culturally, but certainly in terms of sonics, you know, we all, even here in Canada, we all grew up with American blues ringing in our ears, the sounds of Detroit from Motown, and there's always been a very high regard for American innovation. So the lads were no exception. You know, they understood that much of what happened had already happened in Britain and originally came from America.
Let's talk about the album. I want to go through it song by song. I remember there was a press playing of the album before the record came out, and it was done at the old McLaughlin Planetarium. And we were all ushered in, and the lights went down, and then the synthesizer pulse from Where the Streets Have No Name slowly came up. And as the pulse came up, the stars came out on the dome. And then as Edge starts playing guitar, the stars start turning. And it was like, oh God, here we go. And I think this was the first song that I'd ever heard somebody describe as cinematic. And it really is. I mean, you listen to it today, and it's so much more than just a rock song. It takes you someplace from the moment that synthesizer comes in.
It does have that sound. Let me try your mic. No, it's okay. You just have a louder voice than me, Al. Surprise, surprise. Practice. Well, it has a bit of sunrise in it, doesn't it? You know, as if the day is opening, and it suggests that there's a doorway to a certain kind of dimension. And Bono had this vision about, it was originally called White City, and Where the Streets Have No Name. And White City would be a place where there are no street signs, and there are no signs of anything, and you can wander. You get to, if dogs run free, why can't I? The term would apply. So sort of a utopia where we would get to one day where past judgment, past racism, past poverty lines, where the world can be one.
Yes. There's a very famous story where the Edge could not make the transition from rhythm, where his opening guitar chimes, into where Larry and Adam come in, and you tried over and over and over again for him to make that time signature change, and he couldn't do it. And at one, again.
I know how it happened.
Okay, so. and there's a story about some tape op who defended the tape machine from Brian Eno, who wanted to go and erase everything. What's the truth?
Well, in regards to the band finally getting a handle on the mystery of the time signature, we simply had a very large blackboard on the wall, much like in science class, I was the science teacher, so I had the pointer, and I pointed at the chord changes as they came around. So I go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I would walk the band through all the intro chords that were a little bit complex, because as you pointed out, it went from I think it was a 6/8 to a 4/4. So it became it was a bit of a science class there until the rhythm section understood where the downbeat was, and then off they went. So in regards to the destroying of a tape, Eno doesn't have a lot of patience. So if something takes too long, he thinks there's something wrong with that, and we should just move on to something else. And he had instructed one of the tape ops, as they call them then, one of the assistants, to just erase the track and not tell anybody what he had done. But he was an honest man, he wouldn't do it.
We move on to I Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For. U2 always has spiritual gospel overtones to some of the stuff that they do. We think about songs like Bad and 40. But this really was Bono embracing American gospel with that song.
Yes, it does have a gospel feeling to it, especially when all the background vocals come in. We had a rule. We all did our own background singing. We didn't employ background singers. So it's always the Edge and Eno and myself. And so we hunkered down and we turned this thing into a lovely gospel song. But as I was watching the documentary on the making of, Bono hit on something interesting. He said, of course, we're coming into this fairly well-known gospel territory, and the job at hand then would be to find a new twist or some kind of an angle that would give us a license to visit this wonderful territory. And as I went through the individual tracks of the multi, I realized that we had a good go at a good few ingredients that gave us a chance to reinvent gospel for ourselves. But what's sweet about that song is it started out with Larry's drum beat, which was a great drum beat that I always loved. It was done in a jam session. We had a work title, I think it was Under the Weather or Under the Weather Girls, something like that. But the drum part was always the best part of it, and so I kept fighting to use that drum part, and it became the spine of the song. Yeah.
First single was With or Without You. Bit of a surprise, because it was such a downbeat song for a band that was known for Sunday Bloody Sunday and I Will Follow and Two Hearts Beats One. What was the thinking behind choosing that as a single? Or did it even come up as a choice when you guys were making the record?
I don't think we thought of it as a single as we were working on it. It just started becoming everybody's favorite song, and some of the folks from the U2 office and people hanging around always gravitated to it, and they said, well, there's something really special about that. So you have to listen to those kind of voices as people come in with their comments. But as we were driving over here to see you tonight, Al, we went through Chinatown, and I said to my crew in the car that the Infinite Sustain guitar was born in Chinatown, in Toronto, by an old friend named Michael Brook. And he comes from a family of scientists. He went to Long and McQuaid's and they were out of EBOs. EBO is the thing you put on your strings and you get this kind of cyclical sound. So he went back home and built his own. And that became the Infinite Sustain guitar. He built one for himself, for Edge, and then I have the third one.
And we hear it on With or Without You?
With or Without, that that stratospheric guitar part, that's the Edge playing the Infinite Sustain guitar, invented in Toronto. It was delivered to us in Dublin, and when we took it out of the case, Edge plugged it in, it sounded beautiful. I said, Edge, well, let's try it on With or Without You, and he did one pass, which was lovely. I said, Edge, could you do a second pass? He did a second pass, which was lovely. Put the guitar down, and those became the two parts that made the finish line.
Just like that?
Just like that.
See, when lightning strikes?
we were excited about a sound, and that goes a long way, you know, when you really believe in something at the moment.
Edge is a real technician, isn't he? I mean, this guy has more gear than anybody.
Edge is very technical, that's for sure. He's just good at everything, you know. He's a good downhill skier.
Do you share tubes?
Listen, man, I'm Canadian. I started the tube thing. Well, we share the same hairdresser.
I remember hearing Bullet the Blue Sky for the very first time, thinking, boy, this is angry. This is more angry than Bono has been in a while.
Oh, yes. Well, it's not hard to figure out the lyrical content. I think it has something to do with America bombing El Salvador at the time. And it might have been a questionable maneuver, and he wanted to have his thoughts applied to a song. So I believe that's where it came from, how, you know, what we will do for resources and money ultimately.
I think those first 4 songs, Where the Streets Have No Name, Still Haven't Found What I'm Looking For, With or Without You, Bullet the Blue Sky, have been played during every single U2's set since March 9th, 1987.
Well, that's a lovely compliment. Hey, Al, can I add something about Bullet the Blue Sky?
Yeah.
We recorded the drums in a fairly dry manner, so it was a small room. And then ultimately we decided that the drums should be a little more harder hitting and more cavernous. And there was an empty warehouse next door to Windmill Lane. And we set up the band's PA in there and piped the drums into the PA and remiked the PA to give us a little bit more punch. So for you technical people out there, there's kind of a variation on the reverb chamber, but without reverb, a chamber of density.
That's exactly what they did for Killing in the Name for Rage Against the Machine in '92. The same technique to get that big drum sound.
After us.
After you, yeah. Yes. Now, side 1 ends with Running to Stand Still. I think it does. And you play guitar on this.
Yes, I play guitar. I'm the rhythm guitar player.
And there's a lot of improvising in that particular track.
Yes, what's nice about that song, it was done as a group. Eno was plugged in, as I was, and Larry was mostly playing a floor tom and a bass drum, and it's a really, really lovely thundering part he came up with. But there's a kind of magic that happens in the band room, and Eno and myself as the guest musicians on the session. There's something special that happens when we play together. I've always played well with Eno, and it was nice that the guys invited us to be part of the band for those tracks.
It's interesting to listen to Larry play on this record because a lot of his previous incarnation as a marching band drummer comes out.
Oh yes, that's how it all started. Apparently, he was part of the marching band in school, and he was a cymbal player. Originally, he didn't even play the snare drum. You know those cymbals, like 1 inch head, and you bash them together on cue. He bashed them so hard that he inverted the cymbals, and so that was the end of the cymbal positions. He then moved on to the snare drum, and that's how he developed this. It's a very unique style that he has.
Now, we have the tour coming up where they're going to play the album front to back, and a lot of U2 fans are going to their track listing and looking at number 6, Red Hill Mining Town. This is a song that U2 has never, ever played live. Why? You know?
I don't know. I think
Is it the high notes for Bono?
No, I don't think it's about the singing. I think the groove works on record, but it's a hard one to pull off live because it plods along. Boom, boom, boom. So I think it's hard to hold the audience's attention on a groove that is so half-time. But I spoke with Adam about it recently. He says they've redesigned the groove a little bit so that it works better live. I'm assuming that's what it was, you know, because some tracks, some rhythms just work live and some don't. So it's something that might have given them some trouble along the way, but I think they finally solved the problem.
Well, the expectation for them to play that are going to be running pretty high, so they're going to have to do it.
Yeah. Wonder what they're going to do about the brass, huh? Maybe, well, there's really nice brass on synthesizers these days, so maybe they'll get one of the guys in, because there's a whole city of people below the stage. Surely one of them can play a better keyboard.
Steve Lillywhite tweeted something the other day that Radio Miningtown's going to be released as a picture disc for Record Store Day this year.
Oh,
So that's a rumor, but you and I both know Steve, and Steve is pretty plugged in, so he would know. I think.
Steve would know.
Yeah. Next, we move on to In God's Country. This was Bono was looking at some of the stuff that you guys had done up until that point, and goes to the edge and says, "Can we rock this record up a little bit?" And that's where parts of In God's Country come from. Is that true?
I'm not sure what was going on in their heads with that. I just remember it being a very vibrant and propelling groove that we thought would be a nice compliment to the record. And it's really, I think it's one of Edge's best with the echo rhythms and a great groove from Larry. So yeah, you're not far off. You know, it's rock and roll, but it speeds along. It's got a lot of signposts. You know, it's got a little Autobahn in it.
Trip Through Your Wires, again, a song that has not been played live since the Joshua Tree tour.
Okay. Well, that's in 6/8. 6/8 grooves are hard to deliver live. You know, we talk about this regularly because a lot of songwriters write in 6/8, but they seldom get on radio and they don't communicate all that well live. But that's it's a lovely melody, so I'm sure that they can pull it off. And
Yeah, 6/8, it's tough to dance to. It's like double waltz, right?
Yeah, it's a waltz. I mean, Alicia Keys had a pretty good one a few years ago. You know, she copied James Brown. It's a man's world. So, but she had a hip hop thing to the bottom. So, let me call the boys and suggest a hip hop thing.
Okay. One Tree Hill is another emotional song on the album because it tells a story or it's dedicated to Greg Carroll, the man from the Maori Band.
Yes, who had a motorcycle accident. Yeah, that was a sweet man. It's a lovely title, a lovely image, isn't it? Because he was a standout in the city. Because I think there were only 2 black people in the country at the time.
What was it about him? Did he have a
It's
relationship
supposed
with
to be funny.
What was his relationship with
The other one was Phil in it. Jeez. All right. Okay.
What was his relationship with him? Do you remember?
Well, he was one of the crew, and the thing about U2's, they have really devoted people around them, and it's very much part of the makeup of the band that there's a great support system and a lot of love in the community, the house community.
The track 10 on the album is Exit. This is another song we haven't heard in 30 years.
I don't remember how that one goes. Can we play it?
Yeah. We'll have to dig it out because, frankly, it's lost on me too. I can't think of it.
Can you hum it?
No. And then the final track is Mothers of the Disappeared. This, I'm guessing, came from when they went on the Conspiracy of Hope tour in the middle of of recording the album. And this is about things happening in South America, and especially Argentina and Chile, where dictators were disappearing people who were perceived as anti-government.
Yeah, it's a very sad thought, isn't it? I mean, how fortunate are we here in Canada that we get to speak our minds and our kids get to walk to school, and we're generally not in danger of, we can. So it's a reminder there are certain parts of the world where they don't have that kind of flexibility and freedom to speak their minds.
So those are the 11 songs that made the cut, but there were maybe a dozen more that didn't. And I guess the most famous of the songs that didn't make the album was Sweetest Thing.
Oh yeah, that turned out great in the end, didn't it?
Well, yeah, it took Bono to get into a fight with Ali to actually get it out there.
Yeah, he, well, I don't know if I should be. Is the story common enough?
It is. Is it your birthday? Yeah.
He gave his wife the song, Here honey, I wrote a song for you, it's called The Sweetest Thing. She said, give me the publishing. If it's a gift, I want the publishing.
And she donated it all to, there was a Ukrainian charity, right? For
it sounds about right.
Chernobyl, that's right, yeah.
That sounds about right. That's a lovely
Why didn't that
story.
song make the album? It was the B-side to where? Where the Streets Have No Name, the 12-inch?
It just wasn't complete yet, Al. I think it took another round of maybe a few months away from it. They had another go at it, and then it made more sense at that time. It just goes that way sometimes. Something's not quite ready to be released.
See, here again, I told you this before, but I talked to Steve Lillywhite, and he says that U2 is great at making records. They're terrible at finishing them. And maybe this is an example of something that just wasn't ready in time because...
I think it's he's insinuating that there's, when you go into the studio to compose, if you walk in with finished songs, that's one thing, but if you're composing in the studio, it's hard to know when things are actually complete. So, in their defense,
Okay, so another thing that I've heard from many artists who say that, look, they're up against either budgets or a deadline. Sometimes you don't finish an album as much as you are forced to abandon it.
Well, that's well put. Oftentimes the songs that have had the most labor poured into them are the ones that don't get on. With or Without You came very quickly. It was already quite formed. We tried an experiment, Eno and myself. He went in for the first 2 weeks, went home, and I went in for the following 2 weeks.
You tag team this?
We did a tag team. And we even did tag team mixing. Do you know what that is?
No.
You get 15 minutes to mix. You finish the mix, you leave the room, the other guy comes in, and the only rule is nothing's sacred. And the other guy does a mix for 15 minutes, walks out, and I come back in. And then in an hour, you've got 4 mixes to listen to. It's a lot of fun.
It's kind of like speed chess.
Speed chess, there you go.
Cool. Another song that didn't make it that ended up being a live favorite certainly was one of mine was Silver and Gold. Again, that one could have probably made it.
I think it's the same story, that it just wasn't done, Al, I mean, you're naming 2. What about the other 80?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm looking at the track listing for the 20th anniversary bonus edition. And then on June the 2nd, we have the 30th anniversary box that comes out, and that's going to have a whole lot of extra stuff on it. Did you have any input into either the 20th anniversary or the 30th anniversary edition?
Well, we've been talking recently. Yes, but I think it's all top secret stuff. I don't know how much am I allowed to say.
I don't know anything about her. I mean, we won't tell anybody.
Well, yes, the voice of reason over there, she's going. Well, why don't we leave it at this, Al? I've heard rumors that there's a surprise on the horizon.
All right, we'll leave it at that then. Thank you for your time. This has been very illuminating. You've answered a bunch of questions that I've had for about 30 years. I see you were at Exhibition Stadium October 3rd, 1987 when Bono had his arm in a sling and he gave the guitar to that guy who almost lost his mind because he got to play in front of everybody.
He's here! That was my wife! Alan Bernstein! You want to see the picture?
This is like old home week. This is fantastic.
I went over to Cole's office after the 44 show.
Okay.
I got front rows for that show.
Fantastic. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. A little bit later on, we're going to have a jam session. Before the jam session, we're going to have a U2 tribute band. It's going to go through the album. We're going to have a panel discussion. We have some people who have been working with U2 forever, and they're going to tell some fantastic stories going all the way back to December the 9th, 1980, which was the day U2 first played the Elmo Combo, their very first Canadian appearance. 80 people showed up to that show. And right now, Dan, if we can ask you,
Yes.
can you play something for us?
Yes. Now, before I play a little something, I'll tell a brief story of this instrument. This is a steel guitar. I had it in Dublin, and we're working on a record, and watch my cup of tea. My guitar was stored in the loading area, and over the holidays, the gypsies that lived down the road broke into the building and stole a bunch of stuff. And there's a security cam film of my steel guitar being carried by two tinkers down the road. And my guitar went missing. And Bono had to get on the phone and go through the labyrinths of the traveling people community. And finally there was a settlement. They said, okay, give us Danny's guitar back and we'll give you something worth 20 times the value of it. So it was a negotiation with the gypsies, and I got my guitar back. So it's here tonight. I'll start off with a little improv, and then we'll go into a piece of music that was very much inspired by my time in Dublin. Thanks, everybody. Nice to see everyone here at the HardRock Cafe. Have a nice time, and see you a little later. Yeah.